welcome to my Buddhist podcast, What's Your Favourite Cake? A podcast about how I use the daily practice of Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism in my life. I am an SGI member. SGI stands for Soka Gakkai International, but I am in no way acting on behalf of them. This is my journey and how I use my Buddhist practice to enhance my life, but with the hope that I can inspire you on your journey too. This monthly podcast is available on Spotify as well as my YouTube channel, which is also where you'll find videos with audio that we can all chant along to, as well as study videos and my take on Goshos, as well as basics of Buddhism topics too. And I'm also on TikTok, Twitter and Facebook, where you'll see that now and again I'm a bit more silly. Just search for Nigel the Buddha on those socials. Podcast 2, Shouldism or Buddhism. Hi again, Buddhas. Hope you're all well. I hope you've had an awesome month since my last podcast, which was also my very first. So it was my first and last. Yeah, that's blown my mind. Anyway, please do go check it out after listening to this one, of course. That one is called I Am a Diamond. If you haven't listened, you might well be confused at the title I've given this podcast, which is What's Your Favourite Cake? So I should explain. Or should I? Actually, the word should is a word I really try to avoid. I mentioned in the last podcast that I feel it's quite a pressure word for me. When I get into thinking I should be doing this or I should be doing that, I can get quite anxious and stressed, especially when I'm in a low life state. So should I tell you why I've named my podcast What's Your Favourite Cake? Well, I do want to, but I also want you to go check it out and listen for yourself. Once again, it's called I Am a Diamond, or maybe I Am a Diamond. One aspect of autism is pathological demand avoidance. I have this in abundance. Simple things like receiving messages and emails, phone calls that need responding to. It's very difficult for me to respond until I'm ready to respond. It's like it has to be on my terms. So it's not when, for example, my wife asks me to go tidy my room or finish my lunch before I can go out and play with my friends. It's nothing like that. Maybe when I was a child. I joke, of course. But actually, when things are demanded of me, I can really tense up, like there's a huge wall being built around me. It can appear like I'm being a naughty child who is refusing to clean my bedroom, for example. It doesn't happen in real life. Not now, anyway. Honest. But I can come across as really awkward too. I remember a few years ago when I was working for a transport company, I was responsible for logging the details of trucks incoming and outgoing. Making sure their paperwork was in order was another thing I had to do. And that's a very important aspect of food delivery. One day someone came into the office where I worked and said a camera crew were coming to do some promotional work. He then said, I'll need you to hand some paperwork to the driver whilst we film you. I don't think so, I replied. And then the conversation continued with this person accusing me of being miserable, being awkward on purpose, and telling me how ridiculous I was being because others had agreed to do it. Excellent, I said, so there's no need to ask me. On that occasion, I wasn't being miserable or awkward on purpose. I was inwardly struggling with the demand avoidance that I mentioned earlier. I mean, there are other times, of course, where I'm sure I'm utterly miserable. So far, in this Buddhist podcast, I haven't mentioned Buddhism at all. So, shall we address that balance? I don't know about you, but even when talking about getting in front of the Gohonzon, it still feels really tough to do when it feels like a chore, when I know I should be chanting. Strange, isn't it? But I wonder if that happens to you too. I know that chanting helps. Of course I know that. I've been practicing this wonderful Buddhism since 2006. And I've had way too much actual proof in my life to ever doubt that chanting works. But boy, oh boy, do I find it difficult to sit in front of the Gohonzon sometimes. So how do I deal with all this? Well, sometimes I don't actually. But what does help is when I feel grateful for my life, grateful for the family I have, grateful for the life that I lead, grateful for the opportunity to create value in other people's lives. That's not easy for me to do actually, because when I'm in a low life state, I tend to see the world around me through those glasses, so to speak. Daisaku Ikeda writes, "There is no one as strong as a person whose heart is always filled with gratitude." So we can see that actually it's not a weak and feeble attitude to feel gratitude for our lives. I say that because going back to the silly title I gave this podcast edition, Shouldism or Buddhism, the pressure I feel when I think I should be chanting, or I should be doing this household chore, or I should contact a friend I haven't seen for a while, that's immense. To further explain, let's take chanting for example, and I'm going to list for you now how my thought pattern goes. It goes round in circles. So, number one, I haven't chanted for a while. I need to get back in front of the Gohonzon. Number two, but I'm struggling to. I'll definitely do it tomorrow. Number three, how can I call myself a Buddhist if I don't chant? Number four, but my life state is low and I've got no mental energy to go chant. Number five, but if I don't go chant, how can I encourage others to chant? Number six, I'm a terrible person. I need to be punished. And it goes back to, I haven't chanted for a while. I need to get back in front of the Gohonzon, but I'm struggling to do so. I'll definitely do it tomorrow. How can I call myself a Buddhist if I don't chant? But my life state is low and I've got no mental energy to chant. But if I don't chant, how can I encourage others? I need to chant myself. And it goes on and on and on, round in circles. The dreaded spiral effect, of course. And it's virtually impossible to break that cycle. But break it, I do. Not often as I would like, but I do. Having pathological demand avoidance isn't the only reason why I feel pressure. Over and over again, I can hear my dad telling me off for, well, what he would call lazing around. Sitting watching the TV achieved nothing in his eyes. I should be up doing something constructive, he would say. Or maybe shouted is the better word to use there. Another quote from Ikeda on the theme of gratitude is this one. To feel gratitude to one's parents sounds like a trivial thing, but this is a mark of true maturity and growth as a human being. It doesn't feel trivial to me, that's for sure. I could tell you many things about my childhood, most of which would involve my dad shouting at me, smacking me, hitting me, whipping me with his belt for being naughty, what he would call naughty, and even pure and simply beating me up. So to read out that quote is hard, but of course he makes an important point. I mean, I spent a long time simply hating my dad. You can maybe see why. But where does that get me? Well, it got me suffering incredibly for a long time in my life, that I do know. So I chanted, and I chanted to see his Buddhahood. Not an easy task, I can tell you. But of course it worked. And I'm glad I did chant for his Buddhahood, because our relationship changed and I was able to see that he too was struggling. I could clearly see that maybe this is a bizarre thought, but he was doing his best. Now, I don't agree, of course I don't, with the way he raised me, but I can now feel gratitude. And in fact, it's taught me how not to behave. It's taught me that gentle parenting, respect for our children, that's the way to go. Maybe my dad gave me a valuable lesson in life. Not saying it's okay, far from it. But we're Buddhists, aren't we? We see the positives. And there is no poison that cannot be changed into medicine. Okay, so question. Do I choose Shouldism or do I choose Buddhism? I choose Buddhism. Yay! Of course I choose Buddhism. I mean, this isn't a Shouldist podcast, is it? I have to say, though, that although I've banged on about the subject in this podcast, these days I'm actually much better at not beating myself up when I don't chant. Or should I say, when I don't chant?
Dude, you just said should.
I've been well and truly called out there, haven't I? That was my wife. She'll be joining me in the next podcast. So look out for that one next month. For this one, though, let's finish with an inspirational quote to leave us feeling super refreshed. Again, it's one from Daisaku Ikeda, and he's commenting on one of the more well-known of the Daishonin's Goshos. It's the 3 kinds of treasure. Ikeda says, as the Buddhist teacher Nichiren states, more valuable than treasures in a storehouse are the treasures of the body, and the treasures of the heart are the most valuable of all. Treasures of the storehouse refer to money and other forms of material wealth. Treasures of the body are skills and abilities, as well as physical health. Treasures of the heart are the riches that we build within our lives. This indicates the kind of inner strength that cannot be defeated by any tribulation. It refers to the power to live out our lives in a creative way, with constant joy, fulfillment, and vitality. So much better than the feeling I should be creating value in my life is the feeling of creating value when it's in my heart to do so. Then I'm able to help create value in the lives of others. You have been listening to What's Your Favourite Cake, a monthly podcast about how I use Buddhism in my life. Come join me on my YouTube channel where every day at 12 p.m. UK time I'll be going live, doing Gongyo plus 30 minutes Daimoku. Work out the time difference where you are and join me if you can. So that's every day at midday GMT. I'm also doing shorter TikTok videos where I'll be doing Sancho and then reading an inspirational quote, which I'm sure will set us all up for a fantastic day. Thank you so much for listening.